He truly believed I was blind, deaf, naive. He believed I would stay forever, silently enduring the things he said about me when I wasn't around, as if I were a burden, as if I were a problem he tolerated out of convenience. He thought I would never find out, that I would always trust him, that I would always believe the version of reality he showed me to my face. What he didn't expect was that one day I would be in the wrong place at the wrong time and hear the sentence that turned my life upside down. And in that exact moment, while the world seemed to dim for a few seconds, a single thought became crystal clear inside me. He thought I would stay. He was wrong. Before everything fell apart, I was the kind of woman who believed in people, especially in him. I trusted deeply, the kind of trust that leaves the door unlocked. I gave in, thinking that compromise was love, and slowly, quietly, I began to shrink, without even realizing it. Not intentionally. I just wanted things to work. I just wanted him to stay. I became that woman who does everything, organizes his life, carries his emotional weight, supports his dreams, forgives his mistakes, and in return, he offered less and less. Still, I kept telling myself, it's just a phase. He's stressed from work. That's not who he really is. It'll get better. That mindset, that habit of excusing everything, is a silent trap, one that many women fall into when they love too much. I was kind, but he confused kindness with weakness. I had dreams, but I postponed mine because his emergencies always came first. I swallowed small hurts, convincing myself they were normal. I swallowed sharp comments, telling myself every couple goes through this. I swallowed his silence, even as it grew heavier than words. Before I knew it, I was living a life where I gave everything, and he simply received. I didn't yet understand that people rarely respect what they get without effort. I was teaching him how to lose me, and he was learning fast. The change came slowly, almost invisibly. He started coming home later, at first blaming work, then saying it was just a quick coffee. The warmth in his voice faded. His tone became short, impatient. Silences replaced conversations that once belonged to us. Silences that said more than words ever could. You're no longer a priority. I'm tired of you. You don't understand anything. He began laughing at his phone more often, turning the screen away when I walked by, locking it, even to go to the bathroom. And whenever I asked if something was wrong, he answered with the same sentence, "You're imagining things." That sentence is the favorite shield of men who have already begun betraying emotionally. It's the lazy response of someone who doesn't want to explain, the defense of someone who is hiding something. But at the time, I believed him, because I wanted to. I still thought love meant infinite patience. I still believed waiting was a virtue. I still believed I had to earn his love, when in reality, he wasn't giving me any. The worst part, I felt myself being left behind, but I couldn't prove anything. Not yet. It was on a Friday night that everything truly collapsed. But like all great falls, the signs had been there long before, scattered across small attitudes I kept ignoring so I wouldn't break my own heart. He no longer listened to me. Or rather, he let me speak, but he didn't hear anything. He answered in monosyllables, dismissed my concerns as overreactions, treated my feelings like inconveniences. Little by little, I stopped sharing things with him. Not because I didn't want to, but because every time I tried, he looked at me as if I were interrupting something far more important. And I found myself wondering, almost daily, when did I stop being someone important and become an obstacle in his life? But the worst was still waiting. We were at his sister's house, a small family barbecue, nothing special. I went because I still believed that staying close to his family would somehow bring us closer again. That was naive. He was drinking with two of his friends, laughing loudly, speaking louder, the kind of man who grows 10 feet taller when other men are watching. I was on the other side of the patio, fixing things on the table, when I heard my name. And as anyone would, my ears sharpened. It was then I heard him say, laughing, "She doesn't understand anything about my life. I put up with it because she's quiet, but she's not someone you take seriously." His friend laughed. The other one added something even worse. Women like that are just for not causing trouble. For real life, you need something else. And he agreed. He didn't defend me, didn't deny it, didn't say he loved me, didn't say I was worth something. He just laughed, casually confirming every word. It doesn't hurt because it's true. It hurts because it comes from the person you love. It hurts because you realize that while you were fighting for the relationship, he was mocking it. I froze. I stood there holding a napkin, staring at the table, while my heart tried to understand how someone could be so cowardly. He always said he defended me. He always said he praised me. But behind my back, I was just a burden he tolerated. That sentence echoed inside me like an earthquake. She's not someone you take seriously. That's what I was to him. A temporary choice, the easy option. A woman he believed would never leave. They kept talking. I heard more things I'll never repeat. But something changed in me right there on that patio. Something died, and something stronger was born. It wasn't hatred, not yet. It was clarity. I finally saw the real man standing next to me. After the humiliation, everything became undeniable. He started going out more, hiding more, acting annoyed every time I opened my mouth. When I tried to talk, he repeated the classic lines of emotionally unfaithful men. You're imagining things. You're so dramatic. I can't even breathe without you complaining. You always play the victim. You're overreacting. The typical toolkit of a man who belittles first and then blames the woman for reacting. I slept worse, ate less, carried a constant tightness in my chest. Not jealousy, but abandonment. I was still living with him, but I had already been emotionally evicted. But what cut the deepest wasn't the humiliation itself. It was realizing how much he truly believed I would never do anything about it. He talked to me like he was speaking to someone without a voice, without strength, without identity. He didn't understand that women don't break all at once. We crack slowly, and when we break, we come back sharper. But he didn't know that yet, and his arrogance kept growing because men who lean on contempt believe that contempt is a throne. He didn't realize that the night I overheard him was the night my tolerance died. And when a woman's tolerance dies, the story changes. After that night on the patio, everything changed inside me, though he still had no idea. I kept living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, following the same routine. To him, I looked exactly the same, but inside, I was collecting the pieces, organizing my thoughts, examining every wound, and most of all, watching. He believed I hadn't heard anything, believed I would keep bending, shrinking, apologizing for things I didn't even do. Believed I was still the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing, but he didn't know that the version of me he depended on no longer existed. A new one was forming, and he still walked around laughing with his friends, convinced I was blind. The days that followed were quiet. Not because I avoided conversation, but because I was observing. And the more I observed, the clearer it became that he had stopped loving me long before that night. Or maybe he never loved me the way he said he did. He left the house without telling me where he was going, came home late, sometimes without explanation, guarded his phone as if it held his beating heart, or someone who had taken the spot that once belonged to me. I tried to act normal, but everything hurt. Not because of jealousy. Jealousy belongs to those who are competing for affection. I wasn't competing. I was being replaced by indifference. I began crying over small things, a wet towel on the bed, an impatient glance, a dismissive "we'll talk later" that never came. I felt invisibly abandoned. I was alone next to him, and no one deserves that. Sometimes he tried to break the tension with rhetorical questions. "You're acting weird. You're too sensitive lately. Is something happening?" I responded like any woman who has learned to protect herself. "No, everything's fine." He took that answer at face value. He assumed I had moved on. He assumed I had forgiven him. He assumed I had forgotten. He mistook my silence for surrender. What he didn't understand was this. My silence wasn't acceptance. My silence was preparation. I was letting the pain settle, letting the truth crystallize, letting myself rebuild from the inside, quietly, so that when I took my next step, it would be final. A woman's silence is dangerous to any man who underestimates her, and he underestimated me far too much. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to Stories We Tell and leave a like. Your support helps us keep creating stories about strength, dignity, and new beginnings. Women don't decide to leave overnight. We leave in layers. Layer 1, pain. Layer 2, anger. Layer 3, silence. Layer 4, departure. I was somewhere between pain and silence, but something new began growing inside me, the realization that I deserved much more. I didn't want to argue, didn't want to scream, didn't want to prove anything. I wanted peace, and there was no peace in that house, that relationship, or in the words he had thrown behind my back. So I started reorganizing my life in my mind. I started thinking about what I wanted, what I needed, who I had become, trying to keep him happy. And I realized I had put my entire life in parentheses for someone who didn't see me as essential in his. There was no going back. The decision came one quiet night. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea in my hands, staring at the living room I had decorated. A living room that once felt like home, but now felt like a set, a place where I existed, but didn't live. He walked in late. When he saw me awake, he tossed his keys on the table and said without looking at me, "You're gonna wait up for me now?" In that moment, something became clear. I was never a priority for him, and I never would be. I didn't answer, didn't react, didn't engage. I just looked at him in silence, and for the first time, he looked uncomfortable. Men who thrive on control panic when the environment slips from their hands. And in that moment, he lost control of me, long before he realized it. I had already decided. All that was left was choosing the right moment for him to understand. His biggest mistake wasn't humiliating me behind my back. It wasn't laughing about me with his friends. It wasn't shrinking me until I felt invisible. His biggest mistake was believing I would never do anything about it. Men who underestimate women almost always make this same mistake. They confuse silence with weakness, patience with dependence, love with submission, and that's exactly what he did. Once I grew quieter, he relaxed. He stopped pretending, stopped explaining himself, stopped even trying to look like he cared. He stayed out later, went out more on weekends, treated me like someone who was there only out of convenience. He felt safe. Safe that I wouldn't leave, safe that I had nowhere to go, safe that I needed him more than he needed me. That was his belief. What he didn't realize was that while he felt comfortable, I was becoming clear. He started talking about plans, without including me, trips where my name never came up, future conversations where I was optional, a life he described as if I were just an accessory he could leave behind. And he felt no guilt about it, because in his mind, I was predictable. She'd never do that. She always comes back. She can't handle being alone. That's what he told himself. Contempt makes men careless, and carelessness leaves evidence. He didn't notice I started saving money, didn't notice I stopped asking for his opinion, didn't notice I stopped sharing my plans. He thought I was distant, thought I was tired, thought I was being difficult. What he didn't understand was that I was freeing myself. Every careless action of his confirmed what I already knew. I had been alone in that relationship for a long time. And when a woman understands that, she stops fighting to stay. She starts preparing to leave. There was one night that made everything crystal clear. He came home loud, laughing, telling stories that clearly didn't include me. He dropped onto the couch, kicked off his shoes and said with a smug smile, "You've been really quiet lately. I hope you're not making problems up in your head." That sentence sealed his mistake. He thought I was the problem, thought my silence was immaturity, thought my exhaustion was drama. He didn't know that this was the calm before the change. I answered calmly, "No, everything's fine." And he believed me. He believed he had won. believed I had swallowed everything, believed he could continue disrespecting me without consequence. Nothing is more dangerous for an arrogant person than believing they are in control. A few days later, he made the mistake that sealed everything. He invited friends over, drank too much, spoke loudly, and once again he made comments about me, this time right in front of me, disguised as jokes. She's too easygoing, almost invisible. She doesn't give me headaches. She's easy to live with. People laughed. I smiled softly. And he thought that smile meant acceptance. What he didn't know was that it meant goodbye. That night, while he slept peacefully beside me, I stayed awake. I didn't cry, didn't shake, didn't feel afraid. I felt clear. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I knew when, and I knew that once it happened, there would be no undoing it. He slept like someone who believes everything is under control, like someone who thinks he's already won a war he didn't even realize was happening. And it was there, in that silence, that the story truly began to turn. Because men fail when they believe women don't observe. They fail when they believe there are no consequences. They fail when they confuse love with permanence. And he was about to learn that lesson the hardest way possible, without shouting, without drama, without scenes, only absence. The turning point didn't explode. It didn't shatter walls. It didn't erupt in screams or slam doors. It arrived quietly, precisely, cold and steady, exactly the way men who underestimate women least expect. The last night before everything changed was unsettlingly calm. He was on the couch, scrolling through his phone with that same detached smirk, laughing at messages that clearly weren't about me, or perhaps they were, just not in a way that mattered. I stood in the kitchen preparing tea, not because I was nervous, but because I needed something warm in my hands, something grounding, something that reminded me I still existed beyond the role he had written for me. He walked into the kitchen and said, without looking at me, "You could try being more fun, you know? You've been so dull lately." The words didn't hurt, not anymore. After everything I had already heard, the comments, the jokes at my expense, the laughter with his friends, this felt like recycled cruelty, empty, predictable. I responded calmly, "You're right, I guess I have been." He laughed. Laughed like I had just validated his opinion, like I had agreed I was less, like I was finally admitting that his disrespect had a point. What he didn't know was that it was his last night with me there. I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet, too quiet. While he slept, peacefully, arrogantly, I packed my bags slowly, methodically, not with anger but with certainty. Clothes, documents, a few personal items. I didn't take much. I didn't want weight. I didn't want reminders. Before leaving, I placed my ring on his nightstand, not dramatically, simply, truthfully. It didn't represent anything anymore. I took one last look at the room, the place that was once ours, then mine alone, and finally, no one's. And I left. My sister opened the door before I even knocked properly. She didn't ask, didn't question, didn't pressure. She just hugged me. And in that embrace, something inside me finally broke. Not from pain, but from relief. She had always seen everything I tried to hide. She had always known. Women don't tell other women to leave. We wait, we support, we hold space until she finds the courage to choose herself. I sat on her couch and cried. Not desperation, not regret, not fear, just release. I was safe, I was out, I was free. That was the first day I lived for myself again. He didn't notice I was gone until late afternoon. First came the calls, then the messages, then the accusations. "You're being ridiculous. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk. You're overreacting." Then came the excuses. "I was stressed. You misunderstood. I didn't mean it like that. You're making things bigger than they are." Then the desperation. "Please, just listen. We can fix this. I'll change. I'll be better." But last-minute promises don't repair long-term damage. He wasn't sorry for what he had done. He was sorry he was facing the consequences. Emotional justice is not revenge. It's not punishment. It's not retaliation. Emotional justice is when the person finally feels what you felt. And he felt it. He felt the silence he had ignored for months. He felt the absence he always thought I wasn't capable of. He felt the weight of words said casually, now echoing back at him with no way to take them back. He spent days trying to reverse it, trying to make sense of it, trying to tell himself this wasn't happening, that I'd come back. But I had already crossed the threshold, and the door only opens one way. A woman who wakes up doesn't go back to sleep. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace, and he never gave me that. The last message I ever sent him was short. I heard what you said, and now I understand. Nothing more. No explanations, no paragraphs, no emotional labor. He sent dozens of replies, trying to minimize, trying to justify, trying to erase the impact of a truth spoken carelessly. But here's the unchangeable reality. He didn't slip. He didn't misspeak. He revealed what he actually thought of me. Words like that don't come from nowhere. They come from conviction, and conviction is irreversible. The following days felt strange. I felt both lighter and heavier at the same time, like I'd shed a skin that wasn't mine, but had lived in too long. I slept better, breathed deeper, walked differently, and when I looked in the mirror, I finally saw myself again. The relationship didn't end the day I left. It ended the day he lost me, the day he assumed I would never leave. Life after leaving someone who slowly erased you doesn't begin with fireworks. It begins quietly, almost cautiously, like relearning how to breathe after holding your breath for too long. That's exactly how it was for me. In the first days, everything felt unfamiliar. I woke up not knowing what the day expected of me, and for the first time, that uncertainty felt freeing instead of terrifying. I didn't have to explain myself, didn't have to anticipate anyone's mood, didn't have to walk on emotional eggshells. I started with small things, sleeping in, drinking coffee slowly, going for walks without telling anyone where I was going, rediscovering what it felt like to exist without permission. Piece by piece, I recovered things he never valued: my laughter, my voice, my opinions, my time, my sense of self. Being a woman after surviving quiet disrespect is like opening a door you didn't even realize had been locked. I enrolled in a course I had always wanted to take. I picked up extra work and started saving money. I reconnected with friends he had subtly pushed away. I visited my mother without guilt or explanation. I spent entire afternoons reading in peace. And most importantly, I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I didn't miss him. I missed myself, and that realization was strangely beautiful. After some time, I returned to the old house to collect a few things I had left behind. He wasn't there. The key still worked, and that alone revealed something important. He never believed I would actually leave for good. Inside, the house felt smaller, messier, empty in a way that had nothing to do with furniture. Bottles on the counter. The couch, where I once made myself small, now looked uncomfortable, like the house had shrunk along with him. I gathered my books, some clothes, a box of old photos. As I turned to leave, I noticed something on the nightstand. The ring, still there, exactly where I had left it. And next to it, a letter, written hastily, messy, desperate. I read only the first line. I didn't think you would actually leave. That was all I needed. They never think you will. Not until you do. I didn't read the rest. I closed the door, locked it, and handed the key to the doorman. The house was his, the life was mine. Weeks passed, and even without looking for updates, pieces of his life reached me. He was drinking more, telling friends he didn't understand what happened, claiming it wasn't that serious, insisting I had overreacted. The familiar script of a man who never truly saw the woman standing beside him. He expected me to return, expected my silence to be temporary, expected my absence to end. He still didn't understand. To him, I left without reason. To me, I left after years of reasons. The difference between those who leave and those who are left behind is this: the one who suffers most is the one who never recognized the value of what they had. and he never did. Today, when I look back, I don't feel anger. Anger belongs to earlier versions of me. What I feel now is peace and clarity. The kind that only comes when you finally understand that loving someone should never require losing yourself. I am in a new phase, working, laughing more, caring for myself in ways he never did, sleeping better than I had in years. As for him, I don't know much. I don't ask, I don't check, I don't need to, I don't wish him harm, I wish him distance. I never wanted to destroy his life, I only wanted to rebuild mine. And I did. Because emotional justice isn't revenge, it's freedom. And the day I closed that door and never went back was the day I finally chose myself. When a woman finally walks away from a relationship that dimmed her, the world doesn't transform overnight, but she does. And because she does, everything around her begins to shift too. In the weeks that followed my leaving, I felt as though I was walking inside myself for the first time in years, not rushing, not apologizing, not shrinking, just existing, fully, quietly, honestly. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. It was something deeper, clarity. For so long, I thought that leaving him would make me feel lost, like I had no identity outside the role he assigned to me. But the strangest thing happened. I felt light. I woke up earlier, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I got dressed for myself, not for his approval. I stepped outside without fear of how he'd react or what he'd accuse me of. The world felt bigger. My chest felt open. My mind felt sharp again. Even the mirror reflected someone different, not because I had changed physically, but because I had stopped being minimized. Friends reached out. Co-workers said I looked brighter. My mother said I seemed more like me again. It wasn't magic. It was the absence of being belittled. Women don't blossom because a man treats them well. Women blossom when they stop tolerating being treated poorly. I wasn't becoming someone new. I was returning to who I had once been. But peace doesn't erase the work you need to do within yourself. I realized I had unlearned some crucial things while trying to survive that relationship. Saying no, asking for help, disagreeing without guilt, setting limits, claiming my needs without apologizing. I had lived as though I were in someone else's home, careful, small, quiet, afraid to touch anything. Now I was learning how to take up space again. I began practicing small boundaries. I don't want that. I can't today. That doesn't work for me. No, it felt awkward at first, but every woman who has been minimized knows this feeling. You have to retrain yourself to be whole again. Some nights I would lie down and recall moments from the relationship that once felt normal. Now I saw them for what they were. Subtle jabs, dismissive glances, offhand jokes at my expense. Conversations where he talked endlessly but never asked about my day. Moments where he laughed at me, not with me. And instead of crying, I understood. I understood how I had reshaped myself to fit into a space that was never meant to hold me. I understood how I had dimmed myself so he could shine. I understood how I accepted crumbs and convinced myself it was enough. And the most important realization, it would never be like that again. Recovery didn't come in one dramatic moment. It came in tiny wins that warmed my chest. Eating something I liked without hearing criticism, choosing what movie to watch without an eye roll, walking at my own pace, laughing freely without being told to calm down, sleeping through the night without anxiety, coming home to peace instead of tension. These things seem tiny until you've lived without them. I celebrated everyone. He still texted me. Men go through stages when they lose a woman they thought was guaranteed. Denial. You're making this bigger than it is. Anger. You owe me a conversation. Bargaining. I'll change. We can fix this. Guilt shifting. I was wrong, but you were too. Delayed regret. I realized a lot after you left, but regret for consequences is not regret for actions. He didn't regret what he said. He regretted losing the comfort of me. I read every message, felt nothing pulling me back. A woman who has saved herself never returns to where she was drowning. One morning I woke up and realized something powerful. I hadn't thought about him, not once, not even in passing. That's when I knew I was healed. Healing isn't forgetting the hurt. It's remembering and no longer bleeding. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want answers. I just wanted distance and peace. And both were finally mine. Some stories don't end with a grand finale. They end with a quiet truth, the kind that settles in your chest and stays there. Mine wasn't a story of revenge. It wasn't about making him pay. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about waking up. For a long time, I kept asking myself, where did I fail? What could I have done differently? Why wasn't I enough? Questions that many women ask when they've loved someone who never truly saw them. But healing brought a different question, one far more important. Why did I stay where I kept shrinking? And the answer wasn't cruel. It was compassionate. I stayed because I believed love was sacrifice. I stayed because I thought patience was proof of loyalty. I stayed because I confused endurance with commitment. I stayed because women are often taught to carry the relationship on their backs. But love shouldn't require disappearing. Love shouldn't mean enduring disrespect. Love shouldn't make you feel small. If it does, it isn't love. It's erosion. What he did wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, a belief system. Men who humiliate their partners behind their backs don't do it accidentally. They do it because they believe they can. Because they believe she'll never find out, because they believe she'll stay even if she does. They underestimate the very heart they rely on, until the day that heart wakes up, and mine did. I realized that someone who truly loves you doesn't make you feel small in secret. Someone who values you doesn't hide you. Someone who respects you doesn't laugh at your expense. His words weren't a slip. They were the truth he had been carrying. And once a woman hears that truth, something inside her shifts permanently. I don't carry hatred, I don't carry bitterness, I don't carry the urge to hurt him back. I carry awareness, strength, boundaries, dignity. I carry the knowledge that silence can be dangerous, not because it hides weakness, but because it prepares transformation. I carry the understanding that my worth never depended on his ability to see it. And I carry the certainty that I will never again sit quietly in a place where I am disrespected. My heart is not a doormat. My love is not a consolation prize. My presence is not something to laugh about. Those are lessons he taught me by losing me. If you're hearing this and something inside you tightened, if you felt seen, exposed, or uncomfortable, then maybe this isn't just a story. Maybe it's a mirror. Maybe you've been shrinking too. Maybe you've been excusing too much. Maybe you've been carrying a relationship that someone else has already dropped. Maybe you've been dismissed, belittled, or overlooked in ways you convinced yourself were normal. They're not. Respect doesn't confuse. Affection doesn't vanish behind your back. Love doesn't mock you when you're not in the room. If your heart feels small, if your voice feels faint, if your light feels dim, please know this. You are not imagining things. You are not too sensitive. You are not asking for too much. You are asking for the bare minimum. And you deserve far more than that. Leaving isn't about weakness. Leaving is about remembering who you are. I am not the woman who listened to that conversation on the patio anymore. And he is not the man who had the power to break me. I rose. I rebuilt myself. I chose peace over pride. I chose dignity over fear. I chose myself over him and he. He stayed exactly where he was, in the small world he created, surrounded by the same voices that clapped while he diminished me. I didn't leave to punish him. I left to save myself. That is emotional justice. Quiet, strong, permanent. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell. Leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep creating stories about strength, self-respect, and new beginnings. Because stories that restore dignity deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here.